We welcome you to the Mango Festival, Day 2. Looks like it's still sunny outside, knock on wood. Seems like we're doing good. But we're glad that you're taking time out to listen to our lectures today. As the Director of Education, it's very important to make sure that we integrate. When we have you guys here, we give you an opportunity to learn something new. So that is my job, and I'm very proud of my job. So this next lecture is going to be very helpful for some of you who have mangoes in your yard, mangoes at your homes. Today, we're going to be listening to Dr. Jonathan Crane. He is from the IFAS Extension Office from the University of Florida. He's a tropical fruit expert, so lots of questions for him, I'm sure. And today he's going to be talking about mango pests and pest management for your landscape. So without further ado, give it up for Dr. Crane.
Thanks very much. Thanks for asking me to talk. So probably one of the biggest issues that homeowners face is, number one, getting the fruit to actually set in the landscape because of fungal diseases mostly. And then once it's set, usually, you'll have at least some fruit, but it's getting the fruit set that's the big thing. So I'm going to talk a little bit about pest management in the home landscape with your mango trees. So we already know, and if you have mango trees, you probably know there are numerous diseases and insects that attack them. But there are some strategies that can help you avoid some of these problems or mitigate some of these problems. One is having a healthy tree. So that's really a key thing. If your tree's not healthy, much more susceptible to attack by diseases and insects. So plant location, where in the landscape do you want to plant the trees? The spacing of the tree away from other plants, other trees, and structures, things like that. And then pruning the tree and maintaining the size of the tree to open it up to light and air movement will help that tree dry off quickly. So some of these fungal diseases, they talk about hours of leaf wetness. So the longer the leaves and the flowers and the panicles and the fruit are wet, the more likely the fungi will attack the fruit and be successful. The more quickly that it dries out, the less intense are the diseases in general. So pruning can be that's really a key thing. The other thing too is to identify the pest or disease before you try to do anything about it. In some cases, especially with insects, people say, oh, I've got these insects, it's a big problem. And it turns out they're either pollinators, which you want, or they're beneficial, which you want, right? So you don't want to go killing your pollinators. And the other thing too is you need to be out looking at your trees. It sounds funny, but if you're not out there monitoring your trees and you're like away for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and you come back, all of a sudden you're surprised at what you see. So you got to be there and you got to look at the tree carefully in order to catch things early on so it doesn't become a major problem. And then we're going to talk a little bit about what we call integrated pest management, IPM. And that includes cultural practices like pruning or not watering your tree with the lawn sprinkler that goes back and forth like this and you're getting all the leaves and the fruit wet. You don't want to do that. Biological control and also, in some cases, a chemical control. Okay. So, for young trees, to have them be healthy, you need to get them established. So when you first plant it, you may actually irrigate that tree every day for the first week or so, depending on rainfall, right? So when you have a tree in a 3-gallon pot, and now you've put it in the ground, the root system is still basically a 3-gallon pot. So you need to irrigate that frequently. But as the days and the weeks go on, you don't, as the root system takes hold, and especially if you see this tree start to grow, that tells you that the root system is establishing. And you can pull back on the irrigating. And you also, you have some people, I irrigate every day for an hour, and you're like, yeah, but this tree the root system's about this big. Why are you irrigating an hour? Every day? No. And intentionally like that's not good. So when you talk about fertilizer, so the first 2 years, you basically want to grow a tree and grow the structure of the tree. So that will include some small amounts frequently of fertilizer or slow release material, and that's to get the tree to grow, to get to a size where it can produce quite a bit of fruit. So that's the first couple of years. And then as the trees get, much older, you're increasing the amount and reducing how frequently you're doing it. Okay, so basically when the trees get to be about 8 years old, you can consider that a mature tree. When should you irrigate these older trees, or if you should, it's going to depend on the weather, the soil, how much water does the soil hold, or is it a super well-drained soil? And then also what stage of growth. So if it's in a super well-drained soil, like some of the sugar sands in Florida that basically don't hold anything, water or nutrients, you may need to irrigate it periodically. Probably the key times are from flowering, during flowering, until harvest, if it's like in an excessively drained. But not every day, just periodically. Why? Because that's when the growth of the tree is most significant. But in the fall and the winter, no, you don't want to irrigate it. You don't want the tree to keep growing. You want your trees to go dormant, basically, during the winter. Why? During that time that it's dormant, the buds that are in the axils of the leaves and the terminal are changing from producing new shoots and leaves to flower buds and panicles and fruit. But if you keep the tree growing, it's not going to do that change, right? And, if we have prolonged dry conditions, it may be warranted to irrigate some of these moderately older trees, 8, 10 years old, occasionally. But mature trees may or may not need to be irrigated. One of the things that trees have, including mangoes, is they have what's called capacitance. And all that means is they have the ability to store water in their tissues, in their trunks, in their limbs, which they can then use later. So you may or may not need to irrigate them. I have trees that are newly planted. I have trees that are 25, 30 years old. The older trees, I don't irrigate. Never turn the irrigation system on. They don't need it, and they have the capacitance that we haven't gotten dry enough, long enough, that I feel that I need to irrigate them. Actually, if you over-irrigate your trees, you can actually reduce the quality of the fruit. It's like diluting the sugar in the fruit. So especially as you're getting close to harvest, the last month or so, you really don't want to be irrigating because you're diluting the quality of the fruit. Also, so if we talk a little bit about nutrients, for mature trees, so you notice on the young trees, I was saying you can use NPK, nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium. But when you start fruit production, year 4, let's say, you really want to eliminate the nitrogen as much as possible. So not apply nitrogen fertilizer. Why? Because nitrogen is an element that tells the tree to grow vegetatively. Or it actually just tells the tree to grow, and if it has the ability, it's going to grow new shoots, and it just keeps growing new shoots and leaves and new shoots and leaves. It may not slow down enough to flower or fruit very well the next year. Plus, high nitrogen is also related to poor fruit set and also reducing the quality of the fruit internally. I'm sure all of you have opened up a mango and it's sort of like the pulp is sort of jelly-like or missing. That can be due to too much nitrogen and also too much irrigation, and especially the nitrogen. So in places where that happens, you really don't want to apply nitrogen. You really don't need to. All the other elements, potassium, yes. All the secondary elements, magnesium and sulfur, yes. All the minor elements, yes. Manganese, zinc, iron, things like that, yes. But the nitrogen, that's when, once they start producing, that's the one you really need to control. And again, healthy trees is really one of the keys to reducing the insect and disease problems. Unhealthy trees are attractive to insects and diseases. Okay. So, tree spacing. So the idea is to really maintain the fruit production on your tree from the ground up. You don't want the upper branches. So what happens if people don't prune? As the tree gets older, the upper branches shade out the lower part of the canopy, the lower branches, right? So it's like an umbrella. So in order for the tree to maintain that lower canopy in fruit production, it has to be exposed to sunlight. And if it's not exposed to sufficient sunlight, those leaves eventually drop off, and then those small stems die back, and then pretty soon the limb is dying back, and your fruit production is going up. So your first fruit is at like 9 feet. I just have no interest in that. I want the fruit where I have to come out with, in my home, where I have to prop the fruit up because it's touching the ground. I'd rather spend the time to do that than try to reach. I mean, I can reach about 8 feet, but 9 feet, no. So pruning annually and periodically is really key to maintaining that sides of the canopy. And to tell you the truth, on these trees that get larger, I don't allow my trees to get at home above 12 feet. And so I don't really care what happens or what could happen above 12 feet. So I'm always selectively removing these shoots that are going straight up and starting to try to shade the rest of the canopy. I just remove those every single year. And the tree then grows out. And then you might say, well, you know, eventually it's going to go out so far that that's going to be a problem. And that is true. But what you can do is you can divide your tree into quadrants if you want. And you would prune this quadrant this year, bring it back 6 feet or so. And so then you won't have production on that side for the next year, but you have it on the other 3 sides. Then the following year, do the other side. Following year, do the other side. So you maintain the production. The other thing it does by limiting the size, the height of the tree and removing upright limbs is you're increasing the light penetration and the air movement, which again will let the tree dry out quickly and reduce the disease pressure. If it's like a forest on inside the tree, the diseases just like to proliferate in there. What else? So the other thing that pruning does, and we are in Florida, is it reduces the chances of hurricane damage. So hurricanes can knock your tree over or pull it out of the ground. And we know from painful experience that if your mango trees, and I'm talking about commercially, if your mango trees are much above, commercially you might be able to get away with something below 18 or 20 feet, but if they're above that, they're probably going to fall over in a hurricane or be pulled out of the ground. And then you'll be spending the next 6 months picking your trees back up or losing your trees because they can't recover. In the home landscape, same thing. So, you know, for these dwarfing type varieties of mangoes, there's no reason the tree is ever taller than 8 feet. If it's one of the more moderately vigorous trees, 12 feet. And even on the real vigorous ones, 15 feet or less. Myself, I go with 12 or less. Doesn't matter. And if it's a less vigorous tree, I'll keep it at 8 feet or less. So it's really important, you know, to minimize the hurricane damage. So a little bit about tree spacing. So again, I already mentioned the vigor of the tree. So there are some varieties, you know, coggeshall, pickering, that are not really vigorous trees. So you can actually plant those, let's say, 15 feet away from each other trees, buildings, things like that, and you'll probably be okay. But if it's a vigorous tree, let's say it's a Valencia Pride or, you know, something like that, you're going to need to be 25 feet away from everything, okay? So it also depends on your willingness to train your trees and to prune your trees. If you're not going to prune your trees, then put them 25 feet away from everything, right? If you're going to prune them, you can put them a little closer. But if you're not going to prune them, right? So low vigor trees like those, they can be 12, 15 feet away. Moderately vigorous, 22, and the vigorous, 25 feet away. And again, you should prune them annually after harvest, right after you harvest the last fruit. And like I said, if you're not willing to prune the trees, then I would have 25 feet or more away from everything. And you never want to plant near power lines, never. The other thing too, and probably you all know this, before you dig in your yard, especially if you're in an urban landscape, you should call, the 311 and have them come out and mark where the wires are, the cables are, and the plumbing is in your yard before you dig. Because if you cut, let's say, the cable, you're going to spend a lot of money repairing that cable. So it's an easy call. They come out and they mark it, and now you know where to avoid. Okay, so we're going to talk about insects and diseases. And probably diseases are some of the greatest impediments to getting your fruit set. Oops. Okay, so this is a page that's just showing you links to information, videos, and websites on growing mangoes, either commercially or in the home landscape. And so you can look at that at your leisure. Okay, so first step in pest control is identify what the problem is. Good idea is to go up online and look at what are some of the mango diseases and insects and be familiar with what they look like. So you know what a thrip looks like. So you know what anthracnose looks like. Anthracnose. Really bad, anthracnose. This is called tear staining, and it's the anthracnose. And it was on top of the fruit, and now the spores are going along the side of the fruit, spreading the disease. So the other thing too, and I mentioned this previously, is during the year you should be out looking at your trees to see, are there insects or diseases causing a problem on the tree, right? If you're not out there looking, you're going to be surprised when you do go out and you find something that is a problem. So it's a good idea to go out and look at your trees, inspect your trees as frequently as you can. If you can't identify what the problem is, you can either take pictures of it and try to look it up online, or you can contact the extension service and they will help you identify what that insect or disease is. It's really important to identify it first, because in some cases, for instance, sometimes people, they see these green and gray splotches on the branches and the trunk, and they think it's a disease on the tree. It's actually just lichens. They're saprophytic. They're just growing on the side of the tree. They don't cause any harm. And so if you thought it was a disease and you spray, it's like, why, right? Or insect. So somebody might say, hey, there's a bunch of there's insects all over the flowers. Are they causing damage? So I've been spraying my mango flowers. Well, you're actually probably killing the insects that are pollinating the mangoes. So you want to find out what is it that you're looking at. And there's also information on that website, as I've mentioned. Okay. So a word about pest control. And this is especially true, well, I shouldn't say especially true. This is true for anybody. You can only use materials that are legally registered for mangoes. However, in many garden centers, they have pesticides, and you really should read the label. And it should say orchard crop or fruit tree or tree crop, something like that. If it's for grass or for flowers, that doesn't mean you can use it on mangoes. And you know, part of that also, so if you do buy something and you're going to use it, you really need to read and understand that label. And that's not only for the safety of the environment, so that you're not polluting the environment, but the safety of yourself. You don't want to poison yourself. And I'm always amazed sometimes at the garden shops, the pesticides they have available for homeowners. You're just like, oh my God, they should not be available. I mean, yeah, anyway, probably should stop there. Anyway, but you have to read the label and understand that. Remember to identify the insect or disease, you know, that the insect is a pest, that what the disease looks like, and that then you can make the appropriate control tactic. Really, the best thing is to grow a healthy tree and to prune the tree so it's open to light and air, so you reduce the potential for disease and insect problems. So there is IPM, Integrated Pest Management. This includes biological and chemical control. We recommend use the passive methods first. So tree spacing, so that you're opened up to light and wind. Healthy tree, pruning the tree, scouting your trees often. If control is warranted, you want to use the least toxic materials first. Always follow the instructions. If you can, you could try biological control. And there are organic products that you can use. And then there's organic materials that are registered. Now, just because it says it's organically certified doesn't mean it's not poisonous. So an organic pyrethrin can harm you just as badly as a conventional chemical-made pyrethrum. So you need to really read the label carefully. And just because it says organic doesn't mean, oh, that's okay. Okay? And then, you know, I guess occasionally, if you really need something conventional, you could use that as a last resort. But I mean, I find that people don't read the labels carefully, and they don't, they're not careful not to harm themselves. You know, they don't wear gloves, they contaminate their hands. The mist spray, as they're spraying it on the tree, blows back on them, you know, just all kinds of stuff. So it's really copper and sulfur are really about, and there are organic forms of copper and sulfur. That's okay to use those if you really need to use something. But all the other stuff, I would try to avoid it. I know I do. Okay, so there's four main, I keep saying this, you've already seen it. For the mangoes, the diseases. This is thrips. This is one of the insects. Okay. At low populations, these are very small insects. They may actually be beneficial in helping with pollination. Okay. They will lay eggs on the panicles and feed on the nectaries. The problem is, if they get real high population, that's when they begin to cause damage. So again, that's why you need to be out looking at your trees. If you just see a few thrips here and there, not a big deal. It's when you see hundreds on the panicle. That's when you've got a problem. So they're most prevalent, of course, during mango bloom, during January through April, especially if it's dry. So if the populations are really high, there are some, these are organic, some of these are organically certified. So Botanigard is a material. Botanigard is actually fungal spores. So we're using a fungus to control this insect. And what happens is the insect bumps into the spore attaches itself to the insect, germinates, and feeds on the insect, which is deserving since it's on my mango tree. But yeah, so Botanigard is something. Pyganic, this is a pyrethrin. It is toxic to humans and others. So just because it's organic doesn't mean it's not going to harm things. The thing about it is it doesn't last very long in the environment. So you use it, and it's pretty much dissipates and degrades, very quickly. This is also something that has been used with thrips. It's a Captiva Prime. It's a repellent. So you spray that on, and it repels the thrips. Okay, so that's an option as well. Try to repel them. You want to try to avoid applications when the pollinators are present. So I would be scouting for the thrips and other insects prior to flowering, before the flowers really begin to open, so you can hopefully prevent it then. Right? If you're doing it, if you're doing it during flowering, although Botanigard's really not, it's only mildly, not really toxic to honeybees. It can affect them, but not that much. But I'll just remind you, honeybees are not the main pollinators of mangoes. It's mostly flies and other flying insects that are the main pollinators. Mirids is another one. And they will lay their eggs on the buds and the flowers, and they cause the flower buds to drop off so they don't set fruit. So you want to be scouting and looking for that, and again, the same type of materials are available. So you just need to be out looking at the panicles and the flowers, and one way to detect the thrips is if you take a notebook with paper, and you take the panicle and you bang it onto the notebook. And if you see a whole bunch of those little thrips, if you see those scurrying all over the paper, if you see just a few, no big deal. You see 30 or 40 of them, it might be a problem. Okay. Now, says avocado red mite. Doesn't mean it doesn't attack mangoes. Okay. And the red-banded thrips, they attack not just the flowers, but they also attack the leaves as well. They will weaken a tree. That's mostly what they're doing. They can end up the leaves dropping off. If you do need to control the mites, and I don't know how many of you have seen mango leaves where the center vein, the tissue along the center vein of the mango leaf is sort of reddish, looks like reddish brown. That's from mites feeding on all the cells on top of the leaves. Because those cells died, those superficial cells. That tells you might have a mite problem. You can use sulfur. There is organically certified sulfur if you really need to control these mites or red-banded thrips. And there's also an oil called JMS stylet oil. It's a very light oil. The caution is you have to choose which one you're going to use, because you cannot spray sulfur and oil within about a month of each other unless you want to defoliate your tree, right? So you don't want to do that. So you've got to really pay attention and not do that. Also, those other materials are also, you could use those. I like the idea of the repellent, really, for me. Mealybugs, this sometimes gets onto the fruit, as you see there, but it'll get on the stems and the new leaves. And again, those same materials are available to control it. You have to be careful with the oil sprays, especially if the temperatures are going to be 90 degrees or above, because oil tends to be somewhat phytotoxic or plant toxic at those high rates. It might damage the flowers, it might damage the leaves, things like that. So these are 4 diseases that affect mango flowering. Anthracnose is probably the primary one. It likes hot, humid, wet weather, which is Florida. Right? Yeah. Powdery mildew is the next most important one, and it likes dry, cool weather, which we get sometimes during mango bloom. And so people will be out, scouting for anthracnose, and they're on top of the anthracnose. They're controlling that if they have to. And then they get no fruit set. And they go back and they look at the panicles, and the panicles are all gray. That's the powdery mildew. They say, I didn't spray because it's been dry and cool. Well, that's when the powdery mildew attacked, when it was dry and cool. So you have to watch during that whole mango flowering part. You know, doesn't matter what the weather is, you need to be out looking. This past year, I was out scouting our grove. I saw some panicles with powdery mildew, so then I used a sulfur spray to control it. Bacterial black spot is a disease. It's not everywhere, but it's around. It can also affect the flowering, fruiting, and the fruit. And the last one is mostly, it's called mango malformation, and it affects the panicles and the flowers, and I'll talk a little bit about that. So, anthracnose, as you've seen some of the fruit up here, it'll attack the leaves as well. It likes humid, rainy weather, as I mentioned. Okay. One of the things you can do if you have small trees is, you know how the panicle, after you've harvested the fruit, or if it didn't set fruit, turns black and it's just hanging onto the stem, end of the branch? Well, if you have absolutely nothing else to do, you can go out and take those off and drop them to the ground. I mean, you can't. On a small tree, it's easy. On big trees, not so much, right? If you do need to control it to get some fruit set, let's say you're just not getting fruit set on these trees, there is organically certified copper, which is called Coside 2000. The other one is called Double Nickel. There's other brands as well. And you can spray those to try to get the fruit set. And the way you want to do that is you want to begin to spray the copper right when the panicle is beginning to emerge from the stem. Don't wait until it's out here. You want to start here. The reason being is the anthracnose fungi spores are everywhere. And so let's say I go ahead and I spray copper here and it's like this big. And then for whatever reason, I don't come back 2 weeks later, I wait 3 weeks, and the panicle's out here. All this time, this has been unprotected because it's now bigger, right? So you want to spray the copper several times. Once the fruit is set, you can stop, right? Powdery mildew. This is, as I mentioned, most prevalent during winter and early spring, and you see how the panicles, everything looks gray. There's no fruit set. And this happened this past year. Some growers did not watch out for that during that cool, dry period, and they lost their fruit set. So again, monitor. There is elemental sulfur that's available, and you just want to make a couple of applications. Again, don't apply any oil sprays within about a month of applying sulfur. And again, cool, dry weather. Begin scouting at panicle emergence through flowering. Bacterial black spot. This is relatively new to Florida. It's been around for a number of years, but I'd say it's relatively new. This is just, we have a publication on this that talks about the different varieties and how susceptible or resistant they are. And we don't have a complete list yet, but it varies by the variety on how susceptible they are to this. And you see what it happens on the fruit and the leaves. It's dispersed by wind-driven rain, so the spores from this bacteria is dispersed by wind-driven rain. Also contaminated tools, gloves, plants, and equipment. There is more information on it. So, how do you control it? If you're in an area that it's really, really bad, there's some varieties you probably won't be able to grow successfully, so grow a different variety. Also, windbreaks help. So in areas where there's a lot of wind, especially if soil particles become airborne, they can actually cause little micro cracks in the peel of the fruit, and then the bacteria can get in there. So that's why windbreaks are sometimes beneficial. Again, pruning the tree is a good thing, and then periodic applications of a copper fungicide for some of the varieties can work at keeping it so it's not that bad. Okay, mango malformation. This is caused by a fungus, and it can be spread mechanically by using contaminated budwood or grafting wood, by infected nursery stock. And that's a normal panicle up there, and there's the infected panicle down there. And you can see how it's all crunched up. Doesn't really set much fruit, and it spreads throughout the tree. Each year it gets worse and worse and worse. So the easiest way to control it is if you see a panicle like that, a branch with it, is go back 3 or 4 feet on that stem and prune it off. Just cut that off. And then remove it from the property. Don't leave it on the ground. Just remove it from the property. You can go from, there have been groves that had 90% of the panicles looking like that. In 1 year, they went to less than 10% just by pruning it. There's no magic bullet, no spray. It's just like prune it out. Yeah, and that's it. So again, monitor, prune it back, dispose of it, and then disinfect your pruning tools. So if I've just pruned it off, I don't want to go to the next branch and prune it without cleaning the tool first. If you do, you've just spread it to that other branch. So you got to clean it up. You got to disinfect the tools. And I think that's it.
All right. Thank you so much. Big round of applause for Dr. Crane.
What do you do about squirrels? Because that's a big problem.
Yeah. Yeah. You can actually now buy these plastic containers that exclude squirrels. And you can put it around, I mean, you have to put it around each fruit. Yeah. You know, that's probably the easiest thing to do. You know, you don't want to, it's daunting to deal with the squirrels, but there is now available online people who are selling these containers that you just put on the fruit, you know, when it's actually not even ready yet, and you just leave it there until you're going to harvest. But that's, you know, it's a labor thing. Yeah.
Dr. Crane, thank you very much for this wonderful lecture. My question is there any permanent solution for malformation?
Yeah, so he's asking if there's a permanent solution for mango malformation. My understanding from the research that's been done in Australia, Israel, and South Africa, that they have found some systemic fungicides that seem to be able to control it. But it's not entirely clear to me, number one. Number two, those materials are not registered for use in the US, so they're illegal, so no. And so number three is the easiest thing, just prune it out. Yeah.
All right. Oh, got another question over here.
If the tree has grown too tall, can you cut the top off?
Okay, so this is an old tree? 12 years. 12 years, yeah. Yeah, I mean, so is there canopy from the ground up, or is it just, where's the first?
Canopy starts about 3 feet.
Oh, the canopy starts 3 feet from the ground?
Yeah, little branch, but the real big ones like I.
Yeah. So you can bring that tree down. Yeah. I mean, I would selectively prune and bring it down. What variety? What variety? Ah, okay. Both pretty vigorous then. Oh, it's a seedling. Well, then it's all bets are off. Yeah. So, yeah, you can bring it down. But just remember that a tree normally puts on, I mean, I'm not talking about a young tree, but let's say a 4 or 5 plus year old tree, generally puts on 3 feet of new growth each year. So if the tree's 12 feet and you cut it to 9 feet, next year it'll be at 12 feet. So you want to bring it down, 6 feet or something, selectively. Yeah. Bring it down. Yeah.
Yeah, Dr. Crane, great presentation, very informative. My question is, what's your opinion about neem oil as a insecticide?
Yeah, so you can use neem oil just like you can use that JMS stylet oil. That would be fine. That would be fine. Yeah. Yeah, that'd be fine. Yeah.
All right. Any other questions? wait, where? Oh, hi, in the back, coming. Camera just catches me running up and down. There you go.
Hi, my name's Renee. My question is for my husband. My husband has a rosy gold mango tree, and we lost pretty much all of our fruit during the early blooming season this year from wind, rain. We had the flower bloom, we had the formations of the mangoes, and then they all fell off, every single one of them. We don't understand what happened or how to prevent it the following year. Like what ideas or suggestions do you have for that?
So when they fell off, were the little fruit that fell off green, or were they were green?
They were green.
Yeah. So you're exactly right, and we hear about it all the time. If it's really windy during flowering, mechanically the flowers and the young set fruit gets knocked off the tree. Not much you can do about that, other than if you have other trees or landscape that can sort of block the wind to some extent, to reduce, that wind impact of it slapping the panicles around. And not also, if it's dry when it's flowering, the female part of the stigma, which shows the stigma, the style, and the ovary, the stigmatic surface should be moist, so when the pollen lands on it, it sticks to it. If it's dry and low humidity, which for Florida is like 60% or less, it'll land. The pollen will land on the stigma, but it's not sticky. It drops off, so it's not pollinated. So it sounds to me like it was a mechanical problem. I mean, like you said, if the fruit were all dark, black and had black spots all over them, the panicles were full of black spots, I'd say it was disease. But it sounds like it was just a mechanical issue.
Okay, whoops.
Yeah.
2 more questions and then we have to call it. Hold on, I'm coming. I saw you.
What states outside of Florida within the southeast region can successfully grow mangoes?
Grow mangoes? Let me see. There's Florida, and then there's Florida. No.
2 more questions.
So, yeah, North Florida, not really. Probably South Texas in some small microclimates, maybe Louisiana, somewhere like right on the coast. Southern California in the Coachella Valley. I don't know if you've ever been out to the Salton Sea. There's several hundred acres of mangoes out there, but in very specific microclimates. So yeah, I'd say, those states, we're warming. The climate is obviously warmed, right? And it's continuing to warm. So, 10, 15 years from now, Georgia, South Carolina, I'm not sure. But, what scares me is, I'd say in the past 8 years, just how quickly the climate is changing. And we are seeing, and you're going to see as well, crops are having to move their location because they either can't take the heat or there's too much heat. So things like lychees or lychees. It's getting very difficult to grow lychee in South Dade. We are too warm all year round, and those trees need to go dormant during the winter, and they need to be exposed to temperatures below 60 degrees for hours, and we're not getting that. So they're not flowering and fruiting very well. So just as an example, so if you want to grow lychee, you need to move 200 miles north. Yeah.
All right. I've actually got 2 more questions because this gentleman has a question for you. Here, can you stand up? You want to stand up? You're talking to the mic.
Our mango tree doesn't grow mangoes because
Yeah. Okay. So do you want
Because
Mom?
the leaves have this on the bottom side of it. We see it on the floor. It wasn't any of those that you showed. It's white and it's lots of little specks, and it's like a hard armored shell.
Those are scales, probably. Scales. It's a type of insect.
And is that why does that stop it from fruiting?
If it's really weakening the tree, but that big tree that you have, I don't think so, no. But that's a good question.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for your question. All right, last one.
Thank you. Hi, how are you? Kind of like follow up on the question that was asked just a minute ago about like small fruits. Like we didn't have a problem with like so much like small fruits that just kind of like fell off, but we had a few because we have a fairly young tree. It's about maybe 4 or 5 years old. And we had some that just turned black, like right on the branch, and stayed kind of like maybe about the size of the microphone head. And they just kind of like went black and stayed on there, and that's as far as they went.
And it was the fruit.
It was the fruit itself.
Yeah, yeah. So that sounds like anthracnose.
Oh, which?
Anthracnose, which is a fungus.
Oh.
Yeah. So if it colonized, see, that's one of the problems is that. So whether the fruit is, really small, the size of my pinky nail, or whether it's a full-size fruit, it's susceptible to anthracnose. And if you're having a real hard time setting the fruit, that's why I recommend it. If you're having a hard time with the variety you're growing consistently, that's when I would say, look, you want to try copper spray, and you want to start the copper spray when the tree just begins to push the panicle out, right? So we're talking about anytime from December through January, you'll just start to see the panicle emerge. That's when you want to start the copper. And then you want to do it about every 2 weeks until it sets the fruit. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
Did you have a question? Oh, okay. All right, everybody, give a big round of applause for Dr. Crane. We appreciate your time and effort.